Hello everybody and welcome into Chop Talk, the inaugural edition. I'm your host Choppadong. I am brought to you by the one, the only DFSArmy.com, your one-stop shop for all things DFS from NFL to MMA, where we have you covered with 20 coaches, another 20 contributors, 1,500 plus members, 24/7 chatting DFS and looking to help you become a better DFS player. We have the tools, we have the customized projections, we have an optimizer set for all of the major DFS sports, we have the content to deliver, and most importantly, we have the coaching to make you better. It's our community that delivers personality in an impersonal world today that is based around the internet. If you look for that kind of interaction where you got another 20 or 30 people cheering you on as you sweat that GPP finish all the way to the top, this is the place for you. I'm going to tell you right now that if you don't believe our track record, I'm going to show it to you. I'm a show me kind of guy. When I look here, I see $250,000, $150,000 winners, several $50,000 NBA winning lineups. We can go all the way down the list to all of the massive wins that our Army has put together over the past couple of seasons. I can take you all the way back to 2017 in March, over a year ago and beyond, because that's just what we do inside DFSArmy.com. So follow the link in the comments section of this video, like and subscribe, become a VIP today. Use the coupon code CHOP, C-H-O-P, to drop your price another 10%. We don't sell you per season. We don't do the NBA. We don't and then charge you again for baseball or hockey or any of that. Instead, we charge one monthly subscription, and it unlocks everything. It unlocks the articles, the tools, the domination station. It unlocks our private chat, our strategy articles, and all of the major sports. That's what we do inside DFSArmy.com. So give us a look today, and let's dive in to what we want to really talk about, which is baseball. Baseball is a complex sport, and baseball is an area where I'm seeing a lot of people asking a lot of questions. I specialize in helping the new guys get up and running in a quick order. I'm the kind of guy that brings you in, puts the training wheels on, gives you that push, and then takes the training wheels off and hopes you don't get hit by traffic. That's just the way I teach. That's the niche that I've carved out for myself inside DFSArmy.com. And I would like for you to come inside and take a look at what our other coaches have to offer. Even if you're an intermediate or an advanced DFS player, we've got the guys that can help you get to even the next level that you're looking to achieve. So anyway, let's dive in. Let's talk a little bit about baseball. I have an article called The Hard Nine that I talk about with our guys on a regular basis, and it has a table of contents in it. I've got 3 articles up. I'm always working on more. It's a little hard to do when you write individual daily slate breakdowns to get off to the side and work on some of these more timeless pieces, but we're going to put a couple of them out soon coming up, so follow along with us, and I'll let you know when those get released inside DFSArmy.com. We've got scoring covered, cash versus GPP, and critical stats, but what I want to do is walk you down through a little bit of an outline and tell you that with the scoring, what I'm talking about in that article is a little bit more of the scoring between the sites, but also a little bit of the construction in the lineups between the sites, and that has changed this year for Fanduel. We've eliminated the catcher. Now we've got a catcher / first baseman, and honestly, I don't really understand that. If we're going to get rid of the catcher, we might as well get rid of the kicker in football. I think the guy holds a position on the field. The guy should be in your lineup. But I'm not on the board of directors at FanDuel, so I don't get any say. Either way, we'll adjust. We'll figure it out. We'll find the loopholes in the strategy, and we'll close them up for our VIPs. The scoring system is really between DraftKings and FanDuel is more of a 2-pitcher versus a 1-pitcher type of thing, where with 1 pitcher you can afford to pay all the way up to the top, and with 2 pitchers you often can't do that because the more you pay for your first pitcher, the more you got to sacrifice on your second pitcher. Of course, that's not a one-size-fits-all rule. It's just a general concept that they use between the 2 different sites. Scoring's a little bit different. The roster construction's a little bit different. All that good stuff. That's in that article that I just showed you. In the Hard Nine. When we talk cash versus GPP, another area that I am different than the industry, I don't believe that head-to-heads and 50-50s are it for cash games. I believe 3-mans, 5-mans, triple-ups, quintuple-ups are all included in that. Some cases, a 10-man league, all are cash lineups. Why? Because I build a different style. I don't build just cash lineups. I don't build just GPP lineups. As a coach, the guys that I teach build hybrid lineups, something in between, something designed to get you across that cash line, but something with the upside to get you even more. It's not going to take all of the risk that it takes to win a GPP, so we don't play a lot of large GPPs. Doesn't mean we don't play them, it just means we don't play them at the bulk of our daily budget. And then we also allocate our resources to cash games and to some GPPs. So that blend, that blurring of the lines is what creates that hybrid lineup and makes my ladder strategy, which will also be included on the DFS Army site under all of the strategy tabs, makes that ladder system something that is actually starting to revolutionize the DFS industry. If you haven't heard about it, you need to go look it up. What I'm talking about in cash versus GPP is non-stacking versus stacking. I'm talking about the different types of concepts that you might play. Why do I say a three-man or a triple up is also considered cash with me? Because I've won them with very cash safe lineups and on a regular basis, not just once in a while. I'm going to build for a very, very heavy floor. I don't pay a lot of attention to ownership. I don't pay a lot of attention to GPP theory and things like that because that doesn't reward the types of contests that I enter. I'm looking more for, I can help you if you're a cash game guy, I can help you if you're a GPP guy, no questions, but I look for something that's in the middle because I always want a lineup that's improving and always crossing the next money line and unlocking a bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger prize. I want to max my lineup out when I build it. I don't want it to just stop at the 50-50s, when it hits the 48th place in a 100-man 50-50, and then just no matter what else it does the rest of the night, it's only going to pay me back $2 on a $1 investment. I don't like that. I would rather that lineup have another line that it's shooting for that's going to unlock triple, and another line it's shooting for that's going to unlock quintuple, and another lineup that it's shooting for that's going to unlock maybe a 100-man league or a small GPP, and then continue to grow from there and maybe take down the whole prize. That's the way I build. If that intrigues you, you need to come in, you need to learn my system. The basic explanation of correlation with stacking with the baseball is pretty simple. We tend not to stack in cash, we tend to stack in GPPs. In the hybrids, we tend to do a little bit of both, but we don't go overboard in one area or the other. Well, the idea of the correlation of that sport is very, very simple. If I've got a guy on second and a guy on first and the batter, and they're all three on my fantasy team, then when that batter hits that home run or hits the bases clearing double, I not only get the points for his production, but I get the points for the other guys that got on base ahead of him via a walk or via a hit or a stolen base or something on their own. And then I get the runs that the batter knocks in when they cross home plate. God forbid it's a home run, and I get the points for everything. That's how you shoot up leaderboards. And in baseball, which is a very, very fluky sport, they tend to score runs in bunches. I want those guys on base when it makes sense to do so. I don't want one guy from this offense, one guy from that offense, one guy from that offense, and hope they all individually have great games. I want to use the power of leverage to create those fantasy points and sort of be more efficient in the scoring that I do. And that's why we do a little bit of stacking. Now, we don't want to do too much stacking because when we focus too much on one particular offense, say the Washington Nationals on opening day, then I go put 4 guys in my lineup and they all only score 2 runs today. Well, guess what? I'm not in a good situation for my GPPs. I'm probably not in a good situation even for my 50-50s. I took on too much risk. And by taking on too much risk, I didn't even cross those 50-50s. I personally want to be a little bit somewhere in the middle to where I've got the shot at the upside when they do score, but I'm not taking on so much risk with such a big stack that I'm running the risk of having a bad day if they all have a bad day as well. Hopefully that makes a little bit of sense to you. When I talk about key statistics, I'm talking about WOBA, on-base percentage, OPS, ISO. OB-ISO is our own metric inside DFS Army. Innings pitched, WHIP, which is walks plus hits plus innings pitched, K per 9, K percentage, Sierra, all that stuff. WOBA, if you don't know what WOBA is kind of a weighted on-base average or a weighted statistic that says that a single is not worth as much as a home run. And when a single is not worth as much as a home run, I want more home runs. But I also want to get on base because I don't want zeros. I don't want outs. So I need to combine the two. I want a guy who gets on base a lot and a guy who does so with power. And that's what WOBA tends to tell me. Now, if I go straight OBP, which is on base percentage, then that's fine if the guy's cheap. If I'm looking for ISO, which is straight power, that's fine if the guy's willing to hit me some home runs and I'm gunning for a tournament or something. But generally what I want is something in the middle that's going to value both of those statistics together. OPS and WOBA kind of do that for me. When I look at pitching, innings pitched, WHIP, that walks plus walks plus hits plus innings pitched or per innings pitched is a metric that lets me know a little bit about the pitcher's control. And on a site like Draftkings, where I get some negatives for hits allowed and things like that, then that statistic becomes more important than it does on Fanduel, where Fanduel doesn't penalize me for hits and walks and things like that. Fanduel just wants to see me get the win, not give up many runs in the process, pitch a lot of innings, and throw a lot of strikeouts. So K per 9 and K percentage are important on both sides. A little more important maybe on FanDuel than DraftKings, because that's where I'm going to get the most of my reward, is in a high strikeout pitcher. When I look at Sierra, this is one that a lot of people get confused by. When I look at Sierra, I'm talking a little bit more about predicting where that pitcher's ERA is going. ERA is earned run average. Obviously, if I give up 1 run per inning pitched over 9 innings, I'm giving up a 9 ERA. That's bad. I want something under a 3, probably under a 4. When I start getting over a 4, I start getting into the pitchers that I want to attack with my bats because they're not very good anymore, certainly over a 5. And so that's what Sierra tells me, is where's that ERA going? It is, I don't know what the S stands for. It's blanking on me in the moment, but it's an interactive ERA type of metric. And it is a little bit predictive in that if the pitcher's ERA is a 4, but his Sierra is a 7, it tells me that his pitching ERA should be a 7. And that over time, it's probably the way he's pitching right now, probably going to gravitate towards that 7, which means he's about to get shelled. And I don't know if it's going to be a small bit over a long period of time, or if it's going to start tonight by giving up the farm. But I want to have my bats in position to take advantage of a pitcher whose numbers reflect better than they should. That's one way that I can look at that. I don't look at the super deep stats like the home run per 9, the hard hit contact rate, the line drive rate, all that type of stuff, because I believe we start getting into, while they can be important, I believe they get into a little bit more of a diminishing returns, and you're going to be digging hours and hours and hours and hours into a day to find out something that doesn't give you much of an edge over the field over a largely volatile sport. When we erase, like, when Cinderella turns into a pumpkin back at midnight and we lose all those stats, day to day is very, very important. And these large sample size statistics like hard hit contact, that tells me a guy's hitting the ball hard, but it doesn't tell me if he's producing right now. I don't mind using it, but I'm not going to rely on it today. I would rely on it if I was a season-long player and I had the whole 162-game schedule to let those numbers pan out, in which case that edge would be very, very important to me. In daily fantasy sports, not quite as important to me. Not important, it's just not as important. So what I'm going to try and do is dig into some of these stats, into some of these articles that we're going to write, and explain them to you, why they're important and which ones are more important. When we talk about Vegas, well, if you want to see the number 1 spot to go for any of these stats, we're revamping our research station as we speak inside DFS Army for our VIPs, and it's going to give you a lot of those statistics in one place so that you don't have to go bouncing around from place to place to place. But one place that if you do go bouncing from place to place that you'd start would be a fangraphs.com. You go under here, under the teams, the season, you would go under leaders for batting leaders and Pillow 217 stats for pitching and for hitting, and you're going to be able to sort out by OPS or by walk rate or by K per 9 or whatever it is that you're looking for as a statistic. They're going to have it. The other thing is there's a glossary of terms. You want to know what WOBA means, or RC plus or ISO or any of that? You can click on that glossary tab and you can read and learn about it. My key statistics in my article have that defined for you, and this is where I got it from, was from Fangraphs. I mean, other than the basic understanding that I already had about what the statistic is supposed to tell you. So that's, in a nutshell, that's your key stats, your critical stats. As far as glancing at Vegas is concerned, what we're going to do is we're going to dive in to vegasinsider.com. You can use a bunch of other sites. Any of the gambling sites will do. I just tend to use this one because it does one thing for me. It gives me a consensus of everybody. I get to see where the line opened and where the line is sitting now, and see if there's any change in any of these numbers. See, like this, they opened at a minus 120 for Pittsburgh, and now it's a minus 125. That tells me that since the line opened, that the public is leaning a little bit more towards Pittsburgh. So sometimes that can tell me when a pitching change happens or a lineup gets released and that line shifts, it can tell me what the public and what the sharp bettors think, and that can kind of tip the scales into maybe how important I value a particular offense that day. Those are the kinds of things I'm looking for. I'm also looking for the high-scoring games. For pitching, I want big favorites. I'm going to come all the way down here and look for like a minus 185 And I'm going to put a lot of credence on that as opposed to, the minus 125. Because to me, the minus 185 is a bigger spread than the 125 means it's a little bit more of a sure thing that pitcher in the minus 185 game is going to get the win. When I look at the game totals, the 9 versus 8.5 versus an 8. If I scroll down even farther, I guess I don't see them, but if I scroll down even farther, I could show you lower. Sometimes we see 6.5s and 7s. Sometimes when when the Rockies are playing at Coors Field, we see 11.5s and 12s. I want to be keyed in for my bats on the offenses or on the games that are supposed to score the runs. Vegas helps point me in that direction. Vegas also tells me if that number is leaning towards the over or towards the under. And this number works the exact same as this minus 125. The bigger this number is, the more it's leaning in that direction. And I can watch that as the day goes on. Sometimes that will flip, and well, not like that, but sometimes that'll flip in that it'll tell me that very, very strongly somebody is leaning towards the under, and then it starts creeping back down to sort of, maybe not quite so much. And that tells me that maybe the game's actually leaning towards the over. So these are all ways to interpret this stuff. This is all stuff we talk about with our VIPs, and it's all stuff that we're going to disclose in the Hard 9 for everybody. When I talk about nailing the pitcher, what I'm talking about is picking the right pitcher on the slate. I want a little deeper dive in the pitchers. I want to start at the top, at the highest price, the Clayton Kershaws, the Max Scherzers, those guys. I'm going to look at Vegas like I just showed you. And then I'm going to see who has the favorite, who has the odds in their favor. I'm going to look towards K per 9 and see who's going to get me a lot of strikeouts that day. I'm going to look at their odds to win, the pitcher's park, the weak lineup they're facing, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and start narrowing that down into a few of the best options. And then I'm going to compare and contrast them within each other. When I'm talking about attacking pitching, I'm looking at Sierra versus ERA like I described just a little bit ago. And we could talk FIP and XFIP and all these others, but really and truly I'm looking for a pitcher who might be running worse than the usual pitcher that is going to be running up against an offense that is in line to score a lot of runs. That's a double indicator that's going to help me target those bats and target that pitcher. If some gas can of a pitcher takes the mound that day, I need to know that because that puts his opposing offense in a good spot to really shellac him. And I'm going to want to be on that side in DFS, and that's where I'm talking about attacking pitching, and I'll show you how to do that. Positional value and batting order. First base is the most productive position. If I run into this article, I believe it's in the scoring article, when I call this back up, and we'll let that load. When I position of most, I guess that's a batting order thing I'm going to show you. So let's just take my word for it when I tell you first base is the biggest position production-wise. Outfield's a big one. Third base is a big one. Second base, shortstop, catcher, not so much. And of course, when the pitcher bats in the National League, he's not going to produce much at all. They occasionally run into one, but they aren't counted on for offensive production. The first baseman, your outfielders, and your third baseman typically are. Again, generic rule. Not all-inclusive black and white only roster first baseman for a power type of number. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is the position produces the most fantasy points over time. So I'm going to be looking for those positive production positions, and I'm going to be looking for maybe middle infield to save a little bit of money. But that's also going to get into things like positional scarcity. Scarcity can be very, very important. If there's only one second baseman on the slate that's worth anything, then I'm probably going to pay up for him because the gap is too large between all of the other also-rans that are in there with him. That type of thing can give you a large edge over the field. When you've got a very, very deep position like outfield, now what you've got is a whole bunch of people that you can roster, expensive, not expensive. Well, when there's 1,000 different sizes of laundry detergent on the Walmart shelf, I'm going to pick the cheaper one if they all do the same thing. If there's only one, guess what? I have to pay up for it. Supply and demand. When the supply is great and the demand isn't being met, the prices are low. When the demand is high and the supply is low, the prices are high. And sometimes you got to pay up to get them. So learning when to do that and what slates to do that in and what contests to do that in is a very valuable teaching tool. Another thing that we discuss with our VIPs inside DFS Army. Batting order is massive. When I look at batting order, and that's where I'm going with this graphic, latest batter in the lineup, fourth. When somebody stacked or only had on all the different teams 1, 2, 3, or 4 hitters and no 5s, no 6s, no 7s, their lineups cashed in the 50-50s 52% of the time. and GPPs 20% of the time. Now you got to get a little bit of the power out of the 5 and 6. That's why the GPP numbers come up. But watch how the caching in the 50-50s starts to go down. The reason why is because you need multiple at-bats. You need to accumulate at-bats. You don't want just 25 at-bats across your team. You want 70 or 80 or 100. That's what you want, because the more opportunities I get to score points, the more points I'm going to score. That's a cash principle and something that we talk about quite a bit inside DFSArmy.com. When I'm looking at BVP, I'm talking about batter versus pitcher history. That can be a good thing. It can be a GPP thing. It's usually a pretty small sample of maybe a guy's only faced the pitcher 8 times and he hit him for 3 home runs. Well, if the guy's only hit 3 home runs on the year, he's probably not got this guy's number. He probably doesn't hit a home run every time he faces the guy. But it can be an indicator that he sees the pitcher very well and is very comfortable hitting that pitcher. So we want to take that into consideration. And in GPPs where we're going for all or nothing and trying to win first prize, in a lot of cases that can tip us off to some pretty low-owned plays that the rest of the industry won't be on. It works in both directions, though, because when a pitcher absolutely owns a hitter, that might be a pitcher that when he owns a lineup, that might be the type of pitcher that we're after. It certainly might be a hitter that we're going to avoid. You know, you can mention in other splits things like right-handed pitchers versus left-handed batters and all that sort of stuff, or, you know, the whole Colorado's only good at home type stuff. You know, that's all fair and good, and it comes into a lot of the GPP mindset, where stacking is necessary, you know, but in cash games, of course, that shouldn't be overdone. Stacking is lining up the 2, 3, 4, 5 hitters, or going into 2 different offenses and taking the 2 and 3 hitter from here and the 4 and 5 hitter from here and the 1 and 2 hitter from here. That's stacking, and you want to minimize that when it comes to cash games, again, because it's setting me up. The more I tighten my focus on one particular offense, the more it sets me up for boom or bust. It's great when it goes boom. It's terrible when it goes bust. So when we don't have the reward in the cash games to win the whole tournament or the whole contest and be first place, then we don't need to take that kind of risk to get there. We only need to get halfway there or a third of the way there to win money. So we're going to take risks in our lineups accordingly. When we talk about weather, rain delays, rainouts, and all of that stuff is very, very important, because we need to know what the percentage chance of rain or wind or cold or whatever matters to that baseball and to how those hitters might do or how that pitcher might fare that night. The theory is that hitters aren't affected by rain delays as much because they don't have to go through all of the warm-ups and things that a pitcher does. A pitcher has to warm up to start the game, and then he goes 2 innings and he gets shut down because they pull a tarp out on the field, and there sits for an hour and a half, and then because he got cold, he needs to warm up his arm again a little bit, and he might not have the rhythm that he had earlier in the game, and blah, 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 blah. Or the coach might not even run him back out there. The hitters are going to go back out there. The hitters are just going to sit in the dugout and play cards, and then when it's time to bat, go hit. Okay? In a large part, that's how those rain delays and weather works. It's very, very important to your pitcher, but you also don't want the game canceled after 6 or 7 innings. In some cases, your stats don't count. And then you take a 0 for your lineup, and you're just bust. You don't want it. You want to avoid it. So you got to pay attention to the weather. You also need to know something about ballpark factors, a little bit of the dimensions. You know, which lineups or which ballparks favor right-handed hitters or left-handed hitters. Which ones favor pitchers. Some of them, like, you know, there's a marine layer out in San Francisco. When that marine layer rolls in the evening at 7, 8 o'clock in the evening, in that game, boy, you can't. Hitting that baseball is like hitting a bowling ball. It isn't going anywhere. The marine layer knocks it down. Knowing that would take you off of those bats in a scenario like that. It might put you on those Colorado bats when they play at Coors Field because the altitude's thinner and it lets the ball fly farther. These are all things that we talk about very, very often. Variance, this is the biggest part. It's just like hockey. The game is crazy. We play a lower percentage of our bankroll than in football or something due to the daily nature of the sport and due to the volatility of the sport. When your range of outcomes is so great, Mike Trout can get you a 0, and that minimum salary guy can get you 2 home runs. When your range of outcomes for Mike Trout is a 0, that's like, would you pay the prices for LeBron James to get you a 0? I mean, if that's the nature of the game, you have to. But can you see how the volatility in basketball would go up if that was the case? If LeBron James isn't going to get you 0 if he plays. He's probably not even going to get you only 20 points or 25 points. He's probably going to get you the 40 to 50 to 70 that you're accustomed to receiving from him. That's why NBA is a little bit, NBA is not easy, but NBA is a little bit more predictive and a little bit more consistent in the scoring. Therefore, it's not quite as volatile. The money line in NBA varies in a 50-50, from whatever, 250 some nights to almost 300 other nights or whatever. But in baseball, it can vary wildly. It can be, 110 one night and 170 another night. And that's a major, major swing. It depends on how those stud players do. But because of that, you can find yourself on the short end of the stick a lot. And you can go through, golly, night after night after night of losing and headaches. It's just the nature of the game. So with all that up and down, you really need to stay the course. You need to manage your bankroll. You need to be ready to just absolutely pull your hair out. But realize it's not necessarily indicative of your ability. I have a coin flipping video on my YouTube channel you might want to watch that describes a 160 game season and how the coin flips went on 8 in a row, 10 losses in a row, and at the end of the season, we still beat the rake. We still wound up on the positive, but we didn't really know. And even that 162 session sample was not near enough when we're talking about flipping a coin. I don't know if I was on the good end or the bad end of that, and that represented a baseball season. So if this is your first season playing baseball, understand that even in August, we may not know if you're truly a winning player or a losing player long term. Hopefully, you keep your bankroll intact, though. You manage it appropriately, and you've still got enough to play with that you are still entering GPPs and hoping to hit that big one that is actually going to pay you the massive ROI required to make you a profitable player over the next few years. That's the kind of stuff we teach inside DFS Army. So when I say that we're sponsored by DFS Army, we're brought to you by DFSArmy.com. That's what I mean. That's where all of my coaching is going to go. That's where our community goes. That's where all of our coaches focus their energy. So if you want to give us a shot, follow the link in the description or in the comment section of this tab. I'd love to have you in there. Say that I sent you. Use that coupon code CHOP. Let's talk baseball. Let's go win during the course of the next 6 months. Let's have a blast. You'll find me in there releasing chin music. I'll show you that actually. And then I'll let you go. Chin music is the article that I put out on most slates Monday through Friday that's going to get you pointed in the right direction. It's going to show you a quick glance at the games. Who's home? Who's away? What's the weather like? Who's favored? Pitching-wise, we look for big numbers here. Batting-wise, we look for big numbers here. And, what time the games are starting. So if we got afternoon games on the slate, they'll be noted. Evening games, they'll be noted. You can find the express slate, the mini slates. You can find the afternoon only or the all day or whatever slates on this graphic fairly easily and see with just first glance what pitchers I might be targeting. Like here, I'm looking at the Cleveland pitcher. Cleveland's favorite, it's a minus 240. I might be looking at, the minus 165 is a little bit attractive, but it's the game total on it's a 10. So I might not be looking at that Boston pitcher if they're supposed to score a lot of runs. I'll probably go back to the Cleveland pitcher. That's one way I'm going to look at that. Plus, the Boston game has some rain forecast in there, about a 60% chance of rain. So what I'm looking at is a game that's these Reds are a little dicey for hitters, definitely dicey for pitchers. The ones are good to go. The zeros are domes. That's how you read that graphic. Very, very easy. I'm going to break down some of the pitchers for you. Like I said, I'm going to isolate down to a few pitchers that I like. Carlos Carrasco is pitching, and I'm going to start looking at what are his odds, what is his K-score. K-score is basically a way to determine how many strikeouts the guy's going to get. That's VIP-only information, and it's going to share a little bit of the salary and tell you maybe I would prefer, this guy at 8,400. It's a pick'em game, and this is a pick'em. I might go here for the favorite, but it all depends on how we're going to do it, and that's what we're going to discuss in this section of chin music. It's going to change up a little bit, but we're still going to target soft pitching with the Sierras, and we're still going to target high implied team totals for what offenses we're looking at. We're still going to have player recommendations and things like that, and then I'm going to bug out. And I'm going to focus more on coaching our VIPs after I drop this article. I'm going to get everybody pointed in the right direction, and then I'm headed back into the Slack channels to coach up our VIPs. Like I said, I'm going to slap the training wheels on you, teach you the fundamentals, take the training wheels off, push you out there, hope you don't get hit by a bunch of traffic. Hopefully you're the kind of guy that's looking for a community like that, that's a bootstrapping community that would also like to root each other on, bring you that personal feel in an impersonal environment. Somewhere out there in the internet where you feel like you're all alone, you're left out, I don't want that to happen to you. I want to pull you into a community that's going to root for you when you're having a good night and is going to console you when you're having a bad night by saying, dude, I picked them too. I get it. I picked those hitters too. If that's the kind of community you're looking for with a lot of advice, a lot of tools, and even an optimizer that can help you build better lineups, then you need to come to dfsarmy.com and you need to use that code CHOP, C-H-O-P, for that 10% discount. And we'll see you on the inside. That'll wrap up the inaugural edition of Chop Talk. Hope to see you back here soon. We're going to blow the mother off of this thing come Thursday when the MLB season opens, and we'll even talk a little bit more hockey here throughout the week. Guys, take care. I'll talk to you soon. Thanks for watching. Come back and see me.